Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our Horizon 2020 Cascade Funding Opportunities webinar. My name is Viola Hay and I'm a European Programs Manager at the Knowledge Transfer Network. Before we start officially, I'd just like to say a few words about our webinar protocol. As you will have noticed already, everyone is on mute. That's just to avoid background noise and interference because we have quite a few people joining us today. I hope you have all connected your audio by now, but should you have any technical or audio issues, please use the chat and get in touch with my colleague Natalie Wittenshaw, who is behind the KTN Webinar 1 participant name here, and she can help you with any technical issues. If you have any questions to any of our speakers, please keep them coming and just put any questions you have into the Q&A box. So you can see at the bottom of your screen the little icon saying Q&A. So it would be great if you use that for the questions and if you use the chat for any other issues you may have. And just to also say that the webinar is being recorded and that all the slides, all the presentations and the recording will be made available to all the registrants afterwards. So, and just a quick reminder of our agenda today. So I'll just hand over in a minute to Stafford Lloyd, who is the National Contact Point for ICT and Future and Emerging Technologies. And Stafford will give an introduction to Cascade Funding. And then my colleague Natalie Wittenshaw will explain a bit more where you can actually find and access those Cascade funding opportunities. And then we're delighted to be joined by a number of speakers from various Horizon 2020 projects who are currently offering Cascade funding. And then there will be time for a nice Q&A session. We'll read out any of the questions you submitted loud, so everybody will hear everything. And then we expect to close in about an hour's time. So, and without further ado, I hand over to Stafford.
Yes, thank you, Viola, and good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to have everybody on the webinar today, and I hope you're all keeping well. So yeah, I'm just going to run through a quick introduction. I thought it'd be good to not kind of assume any prior knowledge about Horizon 2020. So I'm going to start from the very top and just give a brief introduction to what it is. So as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Horizon 2020 is the EU's flagship research innovation funding programme. It has roughly an 80 billion budget, and it's been running since 2014, and it will end this year, hence the name, Horizon 2020. It's orientated around three main objectives, which we call the three pillars, which starting from the bottom up is the excellent science pillar, focused on more research-orientated activities. So within that, I'm responsible for the Future and Emerging Technologies programme. We then have top-down activities, which are formed within the societal challenges pillar, ranging from health to security topics. And then we have what I call the kind of bit in the middle, which is industrial leadership, the aim of which is basically to help improve the productivity and technology uptake within our industrial base. So that's where ICT sits. And I suppose the main message I always like to get across about Horizon 2020 in terms of the broader funding landscape is really it's about large-scale collaborative research and innovation. The projects tend to be bigger with bigger consortia and budgets, etc. Which I suppose in some ways why Cascade funding has become an instrument in Horizon 2020 because it is acknowledged that it can be quite difficult to access, in particular for SMEs and some early career researchers. But I'm going to expand on that a little bit through this introduction. Then who am I as a national contact point? So basically, we are the main kind of structure to provide guidance, practical information and assistance on all aspects of participation in Horizon 2020. There's NCPs across Europe. You can find our contact details. And our activities broadly break down into three categories. I always think the main category is a bit in the middle, which is basically helping people find funding opportunities. Unfortunately, I don't walk around with this suitcase full of money. But we also have a policy aspect to our role. So my kind of mother department is in the UK is Department of Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy. So we do have an influence over EU policy and what comes through the pipeline, as well as how that relates to domestic research innovation policies. And then we also offer support to in-flight projects, so that's a smaller part of the role, And for that, we have a dedicated inbox, so you can contact us if you're having any issues, etc. And then this used to be my Brexit slide. It's now morphed into a slide on what I've termed unprecedented events, given the current climate that we're in. Obviously, Brexit is still in people's minds in the context of Horizon 2020. And basically now the UK has left with a deal. It's largely business as usual for the remainder of the programme. There have been official notices put out by the European Commission. And this basically states that UK persons, entities established in the UK can continue to be eligible to receive union funds under actions carried out in indirect or shared management, which implement union programmes and activities committed under the current multi-annual financial framework from 2014 to 2020. There may be some restrictions around security-related calls or concerning basically financial instruments related to the European Central Bank, but these are very limited. So for a large part, we can carry on as if we were still a member state, is the kind of phraseology that we've been using. There's some guidance available, centrally published by UKRI, there's a link to it there. Regarding Horizon Europe, there's obviously a question that comes up often, which is the next framework programme. That's still being discussed as part of the ongoing Brexit negotiations. Then also a word on COVID-19, as I'm sure some of you are aware, some core topics with deadlines up to and including 15th of April have already been postponed. So I think that affects some health, or mainly some health calls. We do anticipate that there'll be further delays. The need for this has been accepted by the European Commission, and obviously they're kind of working through that process. More announcements will follow. So my advice would be keep your eye on the funding and tenders portal, and if need be, reach out to your national contact points for help and support. So on to the main topic of today, which is Cascade Funding, or sometimes called financial support to third parties. So in the simplest terms, these are open calls run by individual EU projects funded on Horizon 2020. We call it Cascade Funding because money is hence cascaded from the Commission to the project and then to successful participants in these open calls. Or also financial support to third parties, because third party is the legal definition of applicants in this case, is because basically you're not part of the formal grant agreement between the project and the European Commission. The running of Cascade funding opportunities is generally specified in the topic description of a normal Horizon 2020 call, and usually it's mandated or it's an option depending on the nature of the call. There's several reasons why Cascade funding has kind of like started. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's Horizon 2020 has been acknowledged as being difficult to access. It's quite a high barrier to entry, particularly for SMEs and early career researchers. It might be that due to the nature of the project, consortia want to reach out and involve new actors in their research innovation process, or it could be related to the nature of the technological community. So it might be that there's lots of SMEs, startups. So like for financial technologies, for example, have this kind of landscape. So because of that, the projects lend themselves better to having a Cascade funding element. And on to the benefits of Cascade funding. So as one client of mine once said, Cascade funding is brilliant, which I kind of agree with. I think they're really good schemes, mainly because the applications are much simpler and shorter compared to a normal Horizon 2020 funding application. It's a much shorter time to grant, so it's typically around 2 months as opposed to the normal 8 if you're a successful participant in a normal Horizon 2020 project. They're looking for shorter term projects, so it's typically 6 to 18 months, which if you're an SME who's rapidly trying to push your innovation towards the market, you don't have to wait for a 3-year Horizon 2020 project to do that. There's no need for 3-country participation because that's basic eligibility criteria is met through the project running the call. Although I suppose the one flip side to all this is that the funding is capped, so it's typically 50,000 to 300,000 euros, depending on the call and what it's trying to achieve and various aspects related to that. So some important things to note. There's not really any one-size-fits-all rule with Cascade funding. The topics, application process, the scope, target applicants, rules for participation are all set by the individual project. So really, a lot of the questions that come up around, nature of application, do I fit within scope? Really, you need to understand the project and what it's trying to achieve. There's one thing I'd like to highlight. There's lots of projects running now and that are starting up that are going to offer cascading grants. So these schemes will run beyond 2020. I'd expect cascading funding opportunities to run at least to 2022, if not further. So to me, this almost feels like the end of the beginning in terms of cascading grants in Horizon 2020. So do keep your eyes peeled for further opportunities, reach out for support in terms of finding those. And that segues on to the next point. We do find that cascading grants are hard. They are difficult to find. Sometimes it's hard for the projects to kind of get visibility of what they're trying to do, which is kind of why we're running this webinar. And we are kind of working on this to promote these amongst the related communities. So on that note, I'll hand over to my colleague, Natalie Withenshaw from KTN, who will talk through more about what we're doing to raise awareness of these projects and opportunities. But basically, I hope that was useful. Thanks again for joining, and over to Nat.
Thanks, Stafford. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. As Stafford said, my name is Natalie Withenshaw, and I look after the marketing and communication for KTN's European and international programmes. And this includes highlighting funding opportunities for UK companies. Over the next couple of slides, I'll be showing you where to find the latest open calls, and we'll help you so that you have them all in one place. It's a little bit tricky to find if you don't know what you're looking for, so hopefully we can help you today. I highly recommend saving the links I'm about to share in your browser favourites. I've done exactly the same as I revisit the web pages on a weekly basis. Okay, so there are three main places to find all of the most recent open calls, and some deadlines go as far as 2022. The project itself will have a page dedicated to the open call or calls with detailed information, an application form or dedicated email. Then there is the participant portal. So this link directs to a dedicated web page with open and closed calls, and clicking on each of these calls opens it up further as a drop down to include any relevant stages that may be included. And of course, all of the deadlines and the supporting information. This doesn't, at the moment, group by sector, but we will help you with that on the KTN website. So we have a European programmes page, which details the latest Horizon 2020 events. Then there is a link to the Cascade Funding for calls with a March or April deadline. So this is revisited on a monthly basis and will be updated by myself. I'm really keen to get these opportunities highlighted to you, so you can rest assured these will be definitely published on the KTN website or on our Twitter account. So our Twitter account for European and international news, events and funding opportunities is at KTN_UK_EU. I will share open calls on here and also include a link back to the project's website. So I've listed here, and these are all on the participant portal, as I mentioned, and on the KTN website up until the end of April. A list of current open calls, not including the presenters' calls today. So they'll obviously go through their own projects with you. So these are the other current open calls available. So I won't go through each of them because we'll be here forever, but it just gives you an idea of what's currently available. So there are quite a few. And as I said, they do go up to 2022. So I recommend after this, just having a browse through on the participant portal and having a look to see if any fall into your remit. And then I've just popped the link below here again, and that goes direct to the competitive calls webpage. So as mentioned, we will continue to publish all of the open calls. So at the moment, I am going through everything that is available that I know about through an analysis that we're currently rolling out. And we'll keep this updated. So on the KTN website, there is a dedicated web page. And if you also sign up to our newsletters in the sector that you're involved in, that will also include the open calls as well. So you'll regularly get, for example, an ICT newsletter. It will have all of the news and funding related to ICT, and then it will clearly state the third-party open call that is available. So definitely sign up to those after this if you're not already. And it's also good to get the Horizon 2020 events and other opportunities that are available at the moment. We always have related events and things like that. And more information on the financial support for third parties is via this link here. And following the webinar, which is being recorded today, I will send out all of the slides, and so you'll have these links. And as I said, I really recommend adding the links to your browser as a favorite, and then you can just regularly pop back and see if there's any other open calls. And hopefully now you will have a list of what's available and how to refer back to it all in one place, and it just keeps it nice and easy rather than trawling through all of the separate places that you might think that the open calls are. And that's me. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Nat. So I'll hand over to the projects now. And just to put up the running order here. Great, I hope you can all see that now. Please keep your questions coming. We received quite a few already. Please do use the Q&A functionality rather than popping it into the chat. It's just the Q&A symbol at the bottom of your screen, which you can use to submit your questions. And I'd like to hand over now to the first speaker, which is from Agrobofood, Stasia Stoikov. Stasia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Can everybody hear me as well?
Yes, that sounds good.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. My name is Stasia. I come from the Biosense Institute, a research and technology institute that is involved in the Agrobofood project, and our task is running the open call. I've only been given 3 minutes, so I will try and be very brief and very down to the point. And if anything is left unclear, I remain at your disposal for any questions. So Agrobofood as a project actually has 3 open calls, 2 of which are innovation experiments with a total budget of 5.3 million euros, and then 1 for industrial challenges with a budget of 2.7 million euros. Today, I will only focus on the 1 for innovation experiments that is open at the moment. It was launched on March 1st and is closing on May 31st. And for all the others, we will stay in touch, and you can follow all our designated networks to find out more. So who is eligible for this first open call? Well, primarily we're looking for consortia. They need to be formed by 2 to 5 partners, and the partners need to involve at least 1 end user and at least 1 technology provider. They need to offer a solution based on robotic technology and then address a problem in the agri-food sector, which is our topic in a way. You also need to establish a contact with the regional digital innovation hub, and the contact points are provided on our website. For you in this region of UK and generally what we classify as Northwest Europe, it is Eric Pekeriet, who's also part of the call today. What kind of ideas are we looking for? Well, primarily they need to be addressing the topic, meaning agri-food, robotics, and there is a list of fields that we're interested in on the website. You need to show technical excellence, meaning state-of-the-art newest solutions, but not only for research purposes. You also need to address the business aspects to it and show a viable business model. In the greater scheme of sustainability challenges, you need to show the impact that you will have on improving sustainability through your experiment. The partners you're involving should be diverse in terms of geographical coverage, and you can find a list of partners of Agrobofood. Maybe you can involve countries that are not already part of the consortium. Finally, when forming your consortium, think of competent partners, so people who really can deliver the solution, and then start building from there. What is the application process? You need to register at the Agrobofood Innovation Portal at the website, and then you need to read all the documents. There are quite some that you need to familiarize yourself with. And the consortia that you need to form need to also be either or. They can also be both cross-border and or cross-sectoral. And then finally, this idea that you're defining should be something that you've thought through and that really is addressing the call. And in the end, you can submit all the necessary documents and in that way apply. What happens with the projects who do get selected? There are 3 phases that we envision. As you can see, the whole implementation lasts all the way until February 2022. So as Stafford and Natalie were saying, there is plenty of time. The selected experiments will start on September 1st, and the first phase is design. Then you move to develop and then to market. So there's plenty of time also to work on each of the specific segments of the experiments. And upon each successfully completed phase, you get a certain proportion of funding released. So 30, 40, and 30 as it goes. I wouldn't take any further time since I think my 3 minutes are up. As I said, feel free to reach out to me. Here is my email address. Here is the AgroboFood website. And we remain at your disposal for any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, for this very clear and informative presentation here. So the next speaker is Antonio Damasceno from the F6S network, talking about Block IS. Over to you, Antonio.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon for everybody. I'm presenting a Block IS project, which is a project, we have 3 major focus. First is cross innovation across ecosystems. So we have missions, which is not the point today, but then we are supporting SMEs in an acceleration program. Our major focus is on 3 verticals: agri-food, finance, and logistics. And our ecosystem is comprised of tech SMEs, clusters, which provide the knowledge and mentorship, corporate and investors for the latest stages of the program, startups and accelerators, and we also have authorities and politicians. So what does Block IS provide? In essence, we have 2 open calls for SMEs to accelerate projects in those 3 domains. The accelerator has the 3 stages. I'll go through these in a moment, and we are providing 2.8 million euros of funding for SMEs. We have essentially technology support in the form of ready-to-use enablers, blockchain enablers. We have tech support and business mentorship with one-on-one mentors and boot camps. And this is, in a nutshell, our acceleration program, which I would like to go a little bit today in more detail. So we have 2 open calls. The first one already occurred, and the projects are working on now. And we will have the second open call, and this is draft information. So it needs to be confirmed by the consortium. We are in progress in the first semester of this year. We will be selecting 41 companies to enter the Innovate stage. The additional 4 SMEs are to be selected throughout innovation challenges that will be held online. So if you are interested, please look at our web pages on social media to understand more about our second open call and the challenges. A few simple rules: you need to be SME, it's not for consortiums, and all this is in the participant guideline. On the first open call, we have 118 applications, equally divided on the 3 domains, and this is a call for action. So stay tuned on our social media and our channels. Here they are. The slides are available, and this was my time. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Antonio. Just to reiterate, we'll share all of the slides so you have got all the information. So you will have all the information and all the relevant links after the webinar to go back to. So, and I'd like to give the floor now to Maya Sujit from the F6S network, talking about Block Start. Maya, over to you. I think you need to unmute yourself, Maya.
Sorry, hello. Good start. Hello, I'm Maya from F6S, and I'm here to briefly introduce you to the Blockchain Partnership Program. This is not yet another blockchain accelerator. We are here actually to match blockchain developers with their potential clients, so more traditional SMEs in various sectors. So this is Blockstart at a glance. We're a partnership program. We're offering up to 20,000 euros for blockchain developers to ideate, validate, and in the end pilot their blockchain solutions with end user SMEs. Our first open call has recently been closed, and we have actually 10 selected developers entering now the prototype phase. Initially, we had 20 developers selected in the first call, and then they at the ideation kickoff, which is a one-day event, we selected 10 that are now entering this second stage of the program, which is a prototyping phase, where they will be receiving full support from the Blockstart consortium to further shape their solutions. And of course, there is funding involved in this stage. This is 15,000 euros equity-free funding. The third phase of the program is the piloting stage, where they are actually piloting their solutions with their potential matches, potential clients, traditional SMEs. So who are actually we're looking for? We're looking for startups and SMEs from EU and Horizon 2020 associated countries. We're looking for innovative and disruptive solutions dealing with blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies. However, even if you're not a legally established SME, you are still eligible to apply, provided that you commit together with your application that you will establish an SME if you reach the first stage of the program, which is the ideation kickoff. So just to make it clear, we're looking for blockchain developers, startups and SMEs looking to prototype their solutions, to further fine-tune their solutions, and in the end pilot their solutions with real-life end users. We're offering equity-free funding of up to 20,000 euros. For you, we're offering piloting opportunities, of course, all the technological and the business support that you need along the program. And we're of course offering networking opportunities with various entities from across Europe. So along the program, you will have full support to ideate, fine-tune, and in the end, pilot your solution with a potential adopter. How do you apply? The first open call has recently been ended. The next open call is going to be launched this June. So check out blockstart.eu and follow us on social media for further information. You can also contact us via F6S. We're here to reply to all your questions. However, this is not the end because we're also looking for traditional SMEs not yet working with blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. So in case you're still wondering whether blockchain is for you or not, we have an opportunity for you. Come to us, we will give you a test so that you can actually really think whether you're ready to implement blockchain in your current products and services. And in the and we'll invite you to apply for our call for adopters, which is ongoing all the time. There is equity-free funding for you too, up to 4,500 euros equity-free. So come to us, we are waiting for you. blogstart.eu, don't forget, and of course we're here to support you along the way, whether you are a blockchain developer or just looking to adopt new technologies in your current products and processes. That's all from me.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Maya. So please keep your questions coming via the Q&A. So we have a few more speakers, but then we'll come to your questions. The next speaker, Sarah Matteo from Sabala Innovation, has not just one, but 3 different opportunities to present now. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Okay, so yeah, I will present today 3 different programs where my company, Sabala Innovation Consulting, takes part. So the first of these programs will be Data Portability and Services Incubator, DAPSI. DAPSI empowers internet innovators to develop human-centric technologies in the data portability field. Through the whole project, we will launch 3 open calls. Now we have our first open call ongoing. And in total, we will engage around 50 SMEs, startups, researchers, and innovators. Any kind of profile, always you have expertise in the field. Any profile is eligible to apply, even if you apply as a natural person or as part of a legal entity. With our first open call, we will distribute money to around 15 teams. They will be able to get up to 150,000 euros. It will depend on the kind of applicant. Of course, the funding will be limited, for example, in the case of 1 applicant, natural person applying individually. And in total, through the whole project, we will distribute a full amount of 5.6 million euros. So what we are going to find, we found projects addressing the data portability challenge. Specifically, we have identified 3 main areas of work. First one is data transparency for more transparent personal data storage and more fine-grained data transfer. The second one is the data compatibility and interoperability to facilitate switches between service providers. The third one is security and privacy of consumers when their personal data are transferred from one provider to another. And of course, we have an open topic to receive any proposal relevant in the data portability domain. So we are not just limited to the 3 main areas identified. So now we are in the open call process. This is open until the 22nd of April. All the information can be found in the links in the screen. And once you are selected in our open call, you will start a program, a supporting program that lasts for 9 months. So we will engage in this first call 15 teams that will start working in September, and we will follow a funnel approach. So it means that from these 15 teams, they will be evaluated in the middle of the program, and only the 10 best teams will progress to the second phase. So the teams will start working in their experiments in the first phase. In this phase, they can receive up to 100,000 euros. They will finish with a first version of their solutions. And If progressing to the second phase, they will get up to 50,000 extra euros to finish this phase with a minimum viable product or service or similar. Regarding our second program, the European Data Incubator, EDI, this is related to support startups and SMEs working to solve big data challenges. These challenges will be proposed by big European corporations. So with our calls, 3 in total, and now we are in the third and last one, we have the aim of recruiting 100 SMEs and startups and distribute 5 million euros with the support of around 25 data providers that are proposing these challenges in the big data domain to be solved. So in this call, we will engage around 35 teams. Our call will be open until the 17th of June. And once they are selected, they will start the program in September this year. So they will engage in a 3 phases incubation program. The first phase, explore, will be to explore the solution they are going to propose. So this will be a sort of phase, a first contact with the program. And they will receive a small amount of funding support of 5,000 euros. For those well evaluated, 18 teams will progress to the second phase, the experiment phase, where they really implement and develop their solutions, receiving a funding of 80,000 euros. It will be the longest phase in this program, and at the end of the phase, they will have a minimum viable product. They will be again evaluated, and the best 8 teams will finish the program progressing to the evolve phase with a funding support of 15,000 euros. So what else? They don't just receive funding, equity-free funding. They also have access to a dedicated coach, workshops, online, and also physical workshops. They have access to cloud environment for scalable data processing, and they become partners of a very relevant ecosystem where they have the opportunity to make very good connections with large corporations. This program has the call open until the 17th of June. And the link to access the form and the information is also shown in the screen. And to finish, I would like to present Data Market Services. This is a program dedicated to the provision of services. Here we don't offer funding, but we offer really good services. A list of these services is related to fundraising with public funding, venture capital, matchmaking. Also, we offer acceleration with mobility incubation programs. We have 4 accelerators in this consortium providing this support. We provide also expertise and advice related to standards and legal issues with IPR trainings and GDPR advice to the participants. Also provision of data skills and promotion through our networks with marketing support, and also participation in conferences like the next web conference. This is directly offered to SMEs and startups. working with data. And for this second open call, we will engage 50 new participants. They will enroll in a 6 months program that it's planned to be started in July. And the kind of services provided will be through workshops, live training, the provision of relevant contents, also the opportunity to establish mentorship experiences. We offer mobility program and also promotion. Here, I would like to highlight the opportunity to be selected to participate in one of the most interesting events in Europe, the Next Web Conference. As one of the partners in the project is the Next Web, we have direct access to invite you to be there and have a relevant presence in the conference. So the application will be open until the 31st of May. Here, the link to submit your interest. And just to finish, highlight that there is a services program with experts in the sectors, in the relevant sectors. We have consultants, accelerators, researchers, marketing specialists, and law experts on board. So it's a good opportunity to really acquire good skills on that. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we have 3 more projects to go. And the next presenter is Jim Clark from the Waterford Institute of Technology. Jim, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Clark from the Waterford Institute of Technology in Ireland, and I'm going to present the NGI Atlantic.eu project, which started on the 1st of January to 2020 and will run for 30 months. Before I start, I would like to just briefly introduce the Next Generation Internet Initiative, which was launched by the European Commission in the autumn of 2016. And as Sarah mentioned before, it aims to do things very differently from the normal research and development activities of past programs. The NGI initiative aims to shape the future internet as an interoperable platform ecosystem that embodies the values that Europe holds dear, addressing challenges such as restoring trust, protection of personal data, ensuring privacy, security and inclusion, fighting against disinformation online, and reflecting the European values and norms. And since its launch, the initiative has been developed to drive this technological revolution by attracting smaller scale project teams with an emphasis on high impact innovators to bid for regular open calls on a number of relevant NGI topics, which I'll cover in shortly. As I mentioned previously, NGI is attracting the oftentimes harder to reach innovators to the larger scale R&I programs, perhaps due to the administrative burdens of those programs. And to attract these top talents, 75 million euros of grants are directly supporting, in some cases, individual researchers and developers, startups and social innovators, and also research and academics. Now, to accomplish this, the EC is funding 2 types of actions: research and innovation actions, which are acting as intermediaries, and 20% of their budget is used by the consortium to select, monitor, mentor, train, and build a community. And then the 80% is to fund the individual open call projects among third-party researchers, developers, high-tech startups, and SMEs. And then there's also sort of a backbone of coordination and support action projects to ensure the synergies across all of the stakeholders, focusing on outreach, policy and strategic programming, and EU-US collaboration is another aspect of it, and that's where my project fits in. Now, because the webinar today is looking at you know, all the different opportunities, I want to just briefly mention my sister projects as well in all of the NGI topics which are up and running. So the first three on the topics, privacy and trust enhancing technologies, which has two NGI RIA projects, NGI Zero Pet and NGI Trust, has been running for about 1.5 years. The second is decentralized and better data governance. That's NGI Ledger. That's been running for about 1.5 years and also has open calls ongoing. And then discovery and identification technologies, looking at better ways of search and discovery. That's the NGI Zero Discovery project. And then recently starting, you've already heard from Sarah about the DAPSI project on service and data portability. Then there's another one on strengthening internet trustworthiness with electronic identities. That's NGI ESIF Lab. And then another one on open internet architecture renovation called NGI Pointer. And then finally, the EU-US collaboration on NGI is the project that I coordinate, NGIatlantic.eu. So just moving to NGIatlantic.eu, the main thrust of the project is to fund EU-based researchers and innovators carrying out next generation internet-related experiments in collaboration with US research teams. There will be 5 open calls throughout the life of the project. So we run them approximately every 3 months or so in the duration of the project. And so there's a total of 2.8 million euros funding. And as I said, it's mainly focusing on running NGI experiments. So, you know, if there's already some results or solutions that can be experimented on, you know, experimental platforms in either the EU or the US, I'll get into that in a bit more detail. We also have an external advisory group comprised of all the coordinators of all of my sister projects, which I presented earlier. And we also have some high-level US people involved as well in the EAG. And then we have an external pool of evaluators evaluating the projects. And then we have a twinning lab, which is helping EU partners to team up with US partners. So I'll give you details on how you can become part of this twinning lab. So it's NGIatlantic.eu/twinning lab. So we're attracting teams from both the EU and the US so that they can see what potential matchings that we can help to complement the partnerships. You can showcase your experience there and then find an ideal partner for EU-US NGI experiments. So the first open call will start on the 1st of April and will run to the 29th of May at 1700 CET. And the evaluation and notification will take place in June. The total indicative funding for the first open call is 600,000 euros. And we're expecting the start date of the projects to be the 1st of July, 2020. Now, there are 2 different types of proposals. There's an LT for long-term, which will have a maximum contract duration of 6 months with a monitoring frequency of monthly and a funding range of 50,000 to 150,000. And that includes cost of personnel, inclusive of 25% overhead and travel and subsistence. And then the shorter term projects would be a maximum contract duration of 3 months. There would be a fortnightly monitoring frequency. Now, by monitoring, I mean more like mentoring or just checking to see if there's anything that we can help the the project teams in doing. And then funding range would be 25,000 to 75,000. The first open call topics are sort of mirroring the first 3 NGI open call topics. And the reason for this is that there are already some results coming out of these projects. And so what we would like to be able to do is to see if we can team up these results with some excellent teams in the US to see if we can run some experiments with these NGI topics. Now, I note here that while the first open call topics are mapping to the NGI topics in other RIAs, the NGI Atlantic is project open calls are open to all innovators. So it's not an exclusive club type situation. Other participants can get involved. So the first topic is
very, very sorry to interrupt, but I'm very conscious of time, and we still have 2 speakers to go, and we have a lot of questions to go through as well. So
okay,
if you
I'll just wrap up. The one thing I want to just point out is that what do we mean by experimental platforms for running the experiments or prototypes? So some examples in the EU would be the Fed for Fire Plus or the 5G PPP projects that are running. They have many platform style projects. Then in the US, the partners would be more than likely coming from the wired and wireless funded programs of NSF, such as Enter, Genie, Fabric, and Future Cloud Platform, or the wired projects. And then the wireless projects would be included there as well. And there was a dedicated US-EU Internet Core and Edge program, which is still up and running. And there is, we're hoping that there's going to be a follow-up to that. Okay, so I just show a couple of examples here, which you can see when the slides are distributed. And so who can receive financial support? In our case, it has to be a private or public organization of any kind. It can't just be an individual researcher located within the EU member state and twinned with a US counterpart. And then, as Stafford said earlier, up until the end of 2020, at least, the UK participants can participate in the EU open calls. And just one important note, that the funding from NGI Atlantic is funded to cover the work to be carried out by the EU team, and then the US teams will refer to the funding mechanisms of the US partners.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? So it's it's for the lifetime of projects under Horizon 2020, so it will carry on until the program closes. So there's no kind of drop dead at the end of 2020.
Yes,
because it's all funded under Horizon 2020. So we carry on as normal.
But is that the case with the open calls as well? Like if we have an open call in 2021, does that mean
it's a Horizon 2020 project, so that applies to everything that's funded under Horizon 2020.
All right, thank you, Stafford, for that clarification.
It's all right.
To know. Okay.
So Jim, was it your last slide now, or?
This is the last slide, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you wanted to go through. Thank you very much, Jim. A lot of details and good opportunities here for people to explore. So I'm very conscious of time. So if the next 2 speakers could keep to the 3 minutes, that would be fantastic. So can I give the floor to Jeff Pegman from RU Robots Limited now, please?
Hi, thanks for that. Back to robotics. I thought I had 5 minutes. I'll see what I can do. Okay, we are back to robotics. And this is about Rodan and the Robotics Digital Innovation Hub networks. In case you don't know what a Digital Innovation Hub is, there is no particular or agreed definition, but this is mine. A competence center, right? This is where they come from. They're physical centers with technical expertise in specific technical areas. Digital Innovation Hubs are centers with technical expertise, but have additional financial and business expertise. And then we have this new thing, which are the hub networks. And these are connections of hubs, digital innovation hubs, right across Europe. One other definition I want to talk about, because it is actually applicable to the FSTP, these cascaded fundings, they talk about SME or slightly bigger. So it's not just SMEs that are being targeted here. And having been in discussion with the Commission, SME or slightly bigger basically means turnover of up to 100 million and employees of up to 500. There is no capital limit on these either. So just bear that in mind when you see the term SME or slightly bigger. Right, the robotic digital innovation networks, there are 5 of them. They are in 4 what are called priority application areas. These are where the Commission is actually focusing robotics development at the minute: agile production, healthcare, inspection and maintenance, and agri-foods. Where do I fit in? I fit in within this RODAN network coordination, which I won't go into because it's boring. One thing I do want to point out though is within the upcoming calls, this is slightly off topic, but you see we have these 4 application areas. The upcoming call, which is ICT 46/2020, if you are going for one of these pilots, you need to really be talking quite closely to the digital innovation hubs, and you will need a letter of support from them if you're going to stand any chance. If you're looking at one of the RIAs that are coming up, you actually don't need a letter of support, but you should be putting money in to actually work with the Digital Innovation Hub networks, and you should put some words in or a task that actually describes how you foresee yourself actually working with them. Okay, let's go back to Digital Innovation Hub networks and the Cascade Funding. Each network has 8 million for infrastructure building, but they also have 8 million to apply for FSTP funding in support of SMEs or slightly bigger. So that's 40 million over 4 years, quite a lot of money. Just one thing, they are different, but you cannot be funded for the same work twice, and that is being checked. So although you can apply for different ones and you can apply multiply, it has to be different work. So in terms of the announced opportunities, there's quite a lot that have just closed. The current calls, you've got 2 coming up. DIH Hero closes on this is the healthcare one, 15th of April. As far as I'm aware, this hasn't been postponed, unlike the ones the EC has put out. That's for 200K for up to 15 months. And you've heard about the Agrobo food, which is a slightly bigger one, 300 to 500 over 18 months. Upcoming REMA, it's not formalized yet, but they're looking towards December 2020, are going to be doing technology demonstrators, 100K for 6 months, or technology transfer experiments, which are 300K or up to 300K for 14 months. So that is inspection and maintenance. Be aware of that coming up. And I know that we're short of time, but I've just been informed of another opportunity which is relevant by my colleagues across at TUM, Technical University of Munich, Shop4CF. This is got 15 million of funding. It's about creating a virtual marketplace. Interestingly, they're doing pilots with big corporates, so Siemens, Bosch, VW and Oslick, who incidentally are the people that do all sorts of branded washing machines, refrigerators, things that you will actually know, even though you may not know their name. And just very quickly, they've got a series of open calls which should start, they've only just started, but their first open call should start late this year, early next year, and then they've got a rolling series of programs. So if you're interested in manufacturing type calls, then this one is really worth looking at as well. Nothing on, they don't even have a website yet. Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully I've kept to my time.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeff. And our final speaker for today is Youssef Saba from XR for All.
Good afternoon.
Great, Yusuf, I can hear you. Over to you.
I'm opening my presentation. So good afternoon. My name is Youssef Sabah. I work for Europe Unlimited based in Brussels. It's a company and our core business is to connect investors and entrepreneurs. We do that via events where we select entrepreneurs and we invite investors to come together and to discuss potential opportunities. Today I will talk about XR for All. XR for All is not a problem to move.
Hi, Yusuf. I had the same problem. So either share your presentation again, which it looks like you're doing, or in the bottom left-hand corner, there are very grayed out arrows, which you might be able to use. Thank you.
Is it okay? Okay, it works now. So XR for All is a project related to interactive technologies. We ambition to forge a competitive and sustainable ecosystem of European interactive technology providers and users. As part of our objectives, the first objective is, of course, to foster the community and coordinate and foster collaboration among its members. A second objective is to put in place an XR developers platform to allow solution providers to follow a standard way of developing their application and bringing their application to life. A third objective is about an open call for funding opportunities, and this is what we are talking about today. Another objective is to establish a missing XR research agenda, which is missing in Europe, actually. The next objective is to foster technology transfer and investments to help those who have solutions to network and to bring their solutions to market. The XR open call, we have as part of our objectives an objective to launch an open call, and the open call is to select and provide financial support to outstanding research teams to develop solutions in immersive technologies, immersive interactive technologies, everything related to virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, or any immersive and interactive technologies. We have a budget as part of our project of 1.44 million to fund 48 projects, and the funding is given into those projects who are selected are going into two support phases. A first phase where they have to validate their concept from a technical point of view to show the feasibility, and from a business point of view to show the impact and how easy will it be to bring it to market. And at the end of this first phase, which lasts 2 months, there's a funding of 10,000 euros, and half of the project will be selected to continue to the next phase. So 24 projects will get funding of 40,000, additional funding then of 40,000 to actually develop their solution as they have designed it and demonstrated that they will develop it. Who is it for and what are the eligibility criteria? As I already said, we are looking for XR research teams. It's team with multiple expertise to bring the solution live. And it should be a team from an established legal entity. It can be an SME, it can be a large industry, it can be a research institution, an academic, whatever, but an established entity. For the level of funding, we are not necessarily looking for consortiums, but we are aware that some companies may be collaborating with other companies. This is not forbidden, but for us, we have a single entity as part of contractual obligations, and then what they do behind is their own internal dealings. The legal entities needs to be based in one of the EU countries or one of the EU countries overseas countries, and associated countries also are eligible. The legal entity can only be funded once by XR4All, so if any entity has already received funding from the previous call, they cannot apply to a next call. The proposal submitted needs to be about building a solution which is related to immersive or interactive technologies. It needs to be exclusively focusing on civil applications. This is a requirement from Horizon 2020, and I guess it's the same for all the open calls which have been presented. Once the solution has been developed, it needs to go into a kind of catalog. It can be promoted. It's mainly to promote the solution, because what we want at the end of the day is solutions coming to the market. It needs to be, of course, submitted in time, and to be exclusively submitted through the platform we are putting in place. And the link will be available early next week. We are publishing it now, and it will be available early next week. And it can be found at the URL you see on the screen. And it needs to be in English, of course. So it's about eligibility. Now, how is it organized? We have three the open call is divided into three cohorts, so three cutoff dates. The first one is already closed, selection have been made, and the project have just started 2-3 weeks ago their support. Now we are opening early next week the second cutoff date, with the deadline which will be on 26th June, and the third cutoff date will be opened slightly after, and with the deadline in August. How does it work? Of course, there's a proposals time. Then after the proposals time, there are evaluations and grant preparation for those who are selected take between 2 and 3 months. Then you start the first phase, where you it's more about validation of the technical side and business side. It's 2 months. A couple of weeks evaluation at the end of this phase, and then you're entering the second phase, where you develop your application for 4 months. That was it. I sized it for 3 minutes. I hope I was in the 3 minutes.
That's great. Thank you very much, Youssef. And a big thank you again to all of our speakers today. So I certainly learned a lot. Such a variety of Cascade funding opportunities available in these different areas. So I'm really sorry that we overrun so much, but I can still see quite a number of people online. So we'll aim to finish now 1:45, if possible, and come to a few of your questions now. But we'll get back to all the questions and also publish an FAQ document afterwards. So be assured that we will answer your questions, even if you can't get to it necessarily today. So I think starting with the first questions, Stafford, that might be for you. Can we apply if we've recently won an Innovate UK grant?
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, this is money from ultimately from the European Commission, not the UK government. So yeah, there should be no kind of problems if you receive some domestic funding to apply into this scheme as well.
Can I add something to this answer?
Sure.
Because I had the case with someone who was also funded somewhere else. I had to make sure that the funding he's asking from my project is not for the same activities, not for the same things. He got funding from the other funding authority. So you can get funding from 2 places, but not for the same thing.
That's a very important point. Yes, absolutely. Is Cascade funded project set to replace SME instrument?
No. So these are, so the SME instrument is a different instrument. So it's yeah, a very different mechanism, because these are obviously run by projects themselves rather than it being a a funding scheme run directly by the Commission. So obviously in that case, there's no cascading, money comes from the Commission. So I imagine in a way they're in the future they'll be designed to supplement, but certainly not replace, I would say.
Excellent. These questions might already have been answered in the different presentations, but I combine them here now together. So there was a question about whether the calls are open to individuals, for example, researchers, whether they are 100% funded, and how what the definition of a large project or consortium is.
So that all depends on the project, and there's various schemes out there aimed at various target audiences and with different levels of funding rates. So I know there are schemes out there, for example, some of the NGI projects, I think, are more targeted at the research community, and probably because of that offer or operate at a higher kind of funding gearing rate, I suppose. And again, definitions around size of consortia, again, it's almost defined on a project by project basis. So I'd say find out something you're interested in, and then dig into the details of the rules for participation and things like that.
Perfect. Here, question: is Cascade funding going to continue in Horizon Europe?
It's a good question. Oh, sorry, Jeff, you might be a better place to answer this one, so please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the answer is we don't know. Very probably. I mean, they've been rolling it out towards the end of Horizon 2020, and they've been rolling out quite a few things as test beds for Horizon Europe. So I would expect it to be, but we don't know.
That's what I was going to say. so thanks, Jeff.
So hopefully we'll know more in the next few months about that. Is an NCP or point of contact for each of those funding opportunities? That's another question which came in.
So it's a good one. So I imagine each individual project will have, typically has, as we have them speaking today, a kind of nominated contact. I mean, they're not, I suppose, formally recognised like an NCP as such, and I would expect most NCPs have it within their responsibilities to be aware of Cascade funding opportunities in the area, so they could probably help to an extent. But I'd expect the projects and nominated partners within that project to operate as the contact point in that way.
Maybe we have time for another couple of questions here. Projects which ask for consortium, can all the partners come from the UK, or do we need to include partners from other countries?
Again, look at the specifics of the call. I mean, some actually have transporter as a thing, but generally, as Stafford said at the beginning, FSTP does not require multi-country things. So you can be a single country on your own, or you can, for instance, tie up with your local university if you're a company. That's perfectly acceptable under FSTP rules, but look at what the call actually specifies.
Just in the NGI program, they don't even like to use the word consortium for the NGI open calls. They tend to use the word team, which could either be in some of the projects individuals, and then in other projects it's one startup or one entrepreneur or even one research organization or a team of startup plus research, but they really do not want consortiums.
Thanks, Jeff.
In NGI Atlantic.eu, it's a little bit different but again, we call them teams and not consortiums. You're supposed to have a US part of the team and then an EU part of the team.
Great. So maybe a final question, and we'll get back to all the other people who submitted questions separately after this, and any questions which were specific to presenter and to a specific funding opportunity, we'll pass on to the relevant person as well and broker the introductions there. So I guess that's an interesting final question here. What's roughly the average success rate of applications in the Cascade funding projects in comparison with standard Horizon 2020 projects? Any?
Shall we go quickly for a tour with our experience? Because I mean, for example, my first cutoff date, I had 90 applications, 26 eligible, and 16 were selected. So it gives 1 out of 6 almost. But it depends at the end of the day of how much funding is available, how many potential applicants there are out there, and what's the budget for the. I had to limit to 16 because I have 3 cutoff dates, and in total I have to fund for the 48.
I think it does vary, but the experience to date is that it looks better than a standard Horizon 2020, which generally is 10% or less. In fact, they're getting worse.
Yeah.
In NGI, it was something along the line of 1 per 5 as well. There was one of them, I can't remember which one, I think NGI Ledger, that had sort of a 1 in 9 or 1 in 10, it was drifting close to the like H2020 reference points, but the other one seemed to be a bit lower. I'm not sure exactly why that one was so high.
From LocaS, if I may ask, the success rate is misleading, because what we see when we evaluate the applications is that some of them did not read the application guide early. So they just submitted something, and so that even though the success rate is around 30%, I would say for the ones that prepared really well for the call and read all the documents and the guide, the success is much higher, which I think is the same for H2020, because our NCPs always say a lot of proposals did not address thoroughly what was required. So the key for that is be prepared and study what is needed thoroughly and answer all the requests from the call.
Stasha speaking from the Agrobofood project. Can I just comment on something related to this reading the guide for applicants? I've noticed that there was a question about eligibility for slightly bigger companies, and I also noticed on the rodent slide that Agrobofood was one of the projects where this was presented as applicable. For the open call one, slightly bigger companies are not eligible. Only SMEs are eligible at this point. So to clarify that, and all that is stated in the guide for applicants.
Great, thank you, Sarah, for the clarification. Right, so I'm afraid we have to wrap it up here. Stafford, would you like to say any words to conclude?
Yeah, nothing more other than to thank everyone again for listening in and for supporting the webinar. And as has become the new way to greet people nowadays, I hope everybody stays well.
Excellent. So thank you very much, everybody, to our speakers for presenting, to everybody for joining and for staying on longer than we anticipated. We were thinking, oh, it will be done in 45 minutes or so, but just shows how much opportunity there is still available. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll follow up with the slides and the recording, and we'll also get back to any questions we weren't able to answer and to cover here now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.